Have you ever imagined leaving everything you know behind to follow someone who promises eternal life? Picture a group of ordinary men, fishermen, tax collectors, zealots, who left their lives behind to follow Jesus. These 12 apostles, whose unwavering faith and commitment led them to witness miracles and divine teachings, laid the foundation of the Christian faith as we know it today. But have you ever wondered about the tragic fates of these men? They faced unimaginable challenges and endured painful deaths, standing firm until their last breath. Get ready to dive into the emotional stories of Jesus' 12 apostles and uncover the mysteries and tragedies that shaped their lives. Peter, whose original name was Simon, was given the title Peter, meaning rock, by Jesus. He was an ordinary fisherman, yet he was chosen to be the leader of the apostles, a cornerstone upon which the church would be built. Peter, the impulsive and fervent follower, walked on water toward his master, only to be overcome by fear and begin to sink. But Jesus, in a living metaphor of trust, reached out and rescued him. Peter was an eyewitness to extraordinary miracles. He saw Lazarus rise from the dead, witnessed the transfiguration of Jesus on the Mount, and at the Last Supper swore eternal loyalty to his Lord. However, when the moment of greatest trial arrived, Peter, in a bitter act of irony, denied Jesus 3 times before dawn, just as Jesus had foretold. After the resurrection, Peter became a pillar of the Christian faith, preaching tirelessly and performing miracles. His voice echoed in squares and temples, captivating crowds with words that resonated with power and conviction. But this unwavering dedication brought upon him the wrath of the Roman authorities. Imprisoned in Rome, Peter was sentenced to crucifixion. Feeling unworthy to die in the same manner as his Lord, he requested to be crucified upside down. Imagine the scene: an inverted cross, a man hanging upside down, preaching until his last breath, his words still echoing in the minds of those present. The leader of the apostles, the Rock, took his final breath, but his unbreakable faith became an eternal symbol of devotion and sacrifice. Andrew, the brother of Peter, is often remembered as the apostle who brought the first people to Jesus, including his own brother. His name means brave, and he lived up to that meaning until the end of his life. Andrew was a fisherman, a man of the sea, someone who knew the challenges of the waves and the secrets of the deep. He was the first of the apostles to be called by Jesus, and with simplicity and fervor, he followed the one he recognized as the Messiah. Andrew preached the gospel in distant lands, venturing into unknown regions, from Greece to the barbarian lands of the north. His passion for Christ's message was contagious, his zeal tireless. Wherever he went, his preaching touched hearts and transformed lives. However, his dedication to the Christian faith did not go unnoticed by the Roman authorities, who saw in him a growing threat. In Patras, Greece, Andrew faced the wrath of the local governor, who condemned him to death by crucifixion. But Andrew's cross was not like the others. It was an X-shaped cross. Bound to this cross, Andrew endured prolonged agony. His arms and legs were tied, not nailed, extending his suffering. For 2 whole days, he continued to preach to those who passed by, his words filled with faith and hope, even as his body withered away. Imagine the scene: an X-shaped cross, a man hanging, his words floating in the air like a constant murmur of unwavering faith. The images of this scene are powerful, a metaphor for persistence and faith in the midst of suffering. Unlike many, Andrew did not silence his voice, but raised it higher, his last words echoing as a symbol of eternal devotion. James, the son of Zebedee and brother of John, was known as James the Greater to distinguish him from James the Lesser. Along with Peter and John, James was part of Jesus' inner circle, witnessing unique and miraculous moments such as the transfiguration on the Mount and the agony in the Garden of Gethsemane. His passion and zeal for the Christian faith were so intense that Jesus nicknamed him and his brother Sons of Thunder. James was one of the first to follow Jesus and also one of the first to experience the fury of persecution. He preached with an intensity that ignited hearts and stirred the spirits of his listeners. His tragic fate was sealed by King Herod Agrippa I, who, in an effort to please the Jewish leaders, ordered James's arrest and execution. Imagine the scene in Jerusalem, James being dragged through the streets, his hands bound, the crowd silent except for the sound of chains and the murmurs of prayers. Upon reaching the place of execution, James stood firm, a rock of faith amid the storm of adversity. His beheading, a brutal and swift act, marked the first apostolic bloodshed for the sake of Christ. James's martyrdom became a powerful symbol, a hyperbole of devotion that resonated deeply among the early Christians. His courage in the face of death inspired many to hold fast to their faith, even under the threat of persecution and death. The image of James, kneeling in prayer before the blade fell, is a vivid representation of the unbreakable strength of faith. John, the son of Zebedee and brother of James the Greater, is known as the beloved disciple. He was the youngest of the apostles and possessed a heart full of tenderness and devotion. John was present at the most intimate and transformative moments of Jesus' life, from the Last Supper to the foot of the cross, where Jesus entrusted him with the care of his mother, Mary. His closeness to the Master granted him a deep and unique insight into divine teachings and love. After Jesus' resurrection, John dedicated himself to spreading the gospel with unparalleled passion. He founded churches and authored texts that became cornerstones of the Christian faith, including the Gospel of John and the epistles. But his journey was not without hardships. In an era of intense persecution of Christians, John was arrested and exiled to the island of Patmos, a barren rock in the Aegean Sea. It was on Patmos that John received the apocalyptic visions he recorded in the book of Revelation. Imagine the loneliness and isolation of a barren island, the sound of waves crashing against the rocks, and sunlight filtered through heavy clouds. Amid this desolation, John received revelations that foretold the end of times, offering hope and warning to future generations of Christians. John lived to an old age, being the only apostle to die of natural causes. His exile ended, and he spent his final years in Ephesus, where he continued to preach and write until his last breath. John's long life, marked by profound revelations and unwavering faith, stands as a testament to perseverance and hope. Philip, one of the first to be called by Jesus, was a man of deep faith and missionary zeal. He played a crucial role in spreading Christ's message to new territories, moving with determination and courage among different peoples and cultures. Philip was an apostle who consistently brought others to Jesus, as he did with Nathanael, demonstrating a contagious enthusiasm and tireless dedication. His missionary journey took him to Phrygia, a region full of challenges and dangers. In Hierapolis, a city famous for its hot springs and pagan temples, Philip met his final fate. Imagine a vibrant city, with streets full of merchants and temples erected to foreign gods, an environment where the message of Christianity often encountered fierce resistance. It was in this context that Philip preached with fervor, openly challenging the local beliefs and practices. His courage and faith angered the authorities, who arrested and condemned him to death. Philip was crucified, but his death was neither swift nor silent. He was tied to an inverted cross, where he continued preaching for hours, perhaps even days, as his life slowly ebbed away. His words, filled with faith and hope, echoed in the air, touching the hearts of both the curious and the faithful. Philip's crucifixion in Hierapolis is a vivid image of devotion and defiance, a symbol of faith that challenges cruelty and oppression. His final words, spoken in a weak but conviction-filled voice, continue to resonate as a powerful testament to his unwavering faith. Bartholomew, also known as Nathanael, is one of the apostles whose fate was marked by one of the most horrific martyrdoms. Known for his purity and sincerity, Jesus described him as a true Israelite in whom there is no deceit. Bartholomew was a man of deep faith, dedicated to spreading the gospel message to distant and hostile lands. He traveled extensively, preaching in India, Mesopotamia, Persia, and ultimately in Armenia, where he met his tragic end. Imagine the stark beauty of the Armenian mountains, a landscape of breathtaking vastness, where the Christian faith faced severe resistance. Bartholomew challenged the status quo, converting many to Christianity, which provoked the wrath of the local priests who worshipped pagan gods. Bartholomew's fate was sealed in a brutal manner. Captured by those who opposed his message, he was condemned to a horrifying death, being skinned alive. Picture the horror of this torture, his skin being peeled away while he was still alive. Each scream of agony, a silent sermon of the unshakable faith that sustained him. Bartholomew endured this torment with a courage that transcends human understanding, until finally, exhausted by the pain, he was beheaded. Bartholomew's death is an extreme metaphor of sacrifice and devotion, a hyperbole of faith taken to its absolute limit. His final hours, wrapped in unimaginable suffering, stand as a powerful testament to his dedication to Christ and the cause of the gospel. Thomas, often remembered as Thomas the Twin or Doubting Thomas, is perhaps one of the most relatable apostles in his journey of faith. Known for his famous doubt, he needed to touch the wounds of the resurrected Jesus to believe. But once convinced, his faith became one of the most ardent and courageous among the apostles. Thomas's transformation, from skeptic to fervent believer, is a powerful metaphor for all who struggle with doubt in their spiritual journey. Thomas took the gospel to distant lands, traveling as far as India, where his preaching was met with both curiosity and resistance. Imagine the vibrant Indian landscape with its ancient temples, bustling markets, and the cultural diversity that Thomas encountered. He navigated these complexities with unwavering determination, converting many to Christianity through his words and example. But Thomas's courage did not go unnoticed by the Hindu priests, who saw him as a threat to their power and beliefs. In a region known as Mylapore, Thomas met his tragic end. He was attacked by local soldiers who pierced him with spears as he prayed in a cave. The image of Thomas kneeling, his final prayers silenced by spears, is a powerful alliteration of faith and sacrifice. His martyrdom symbolizes the ultimate transformation of a doubter into a convicted martyr, whose life and death continue to inspire the faithful. Matthew, also known as Levi, is a remarkable example of redemption and transformation. Before following Jesus, he was a tax collector, a profession despised and looked down upon by the Jews, as tax collectors were often associated with corruption and oppression. But when Jesus looked at Matthew and called him, simply saying, "Follow me," Matthew left everything behind, his tax booth, his past of exploitation, and followed the Master with complete devotion. Matthew became one of the 12 apostles and authored the Gospel that bears his name, a text that offered a bridge between the prophecies of the Old Testament and the coming of the Messiah. His narrative, rich with symbolism and powerful imagery, deeply touched the hearts of the early Christians and continues to inspire believers around the world. After Jesus' ascension, Matthew took the message of salvation to distant regions, traveling to Africa, specifically to Ethiopia. Imagine the vastness of this land, with its lush landscapes and diverse cultures. Matthew preached tirelessly, converting many to Christianity with his words full of conviction and his life as a transformed example. But his preaching put him on a collision course with local leaders who feared the growing power of Christianity. Matthew was captured and faced a cruel martyrdom. Reports say he was killed by a sword while celebrating Mass. The image of Matthew offering the Eucharist in his final moments is a powerful metaphor of faith and sacrifice, embodying the redemptive transformation of a tax collector into a saint. James the Lesser, also known as James, son of Alphaeus, is a figure who, despite his quiet presence in the Gospels, played a crucial role in the formation of the early church. Recognized as the brother of Jesus, he was a respected and revered leader among the Christians in Jerusalem. His wisdom and piety made him a central figure, guiding the faithful with steadfast faith and a compassionate heart. James the Lesser was known for his life of prayer and righteousness. He was called James the Just, due to his tireless dedication to God's law and the well-being of his people. However, his devotion did not go unnoticed by the Jewish authorities, who saw him as a threat to the religious and political status quo. In a moment of escalating tension between Christians and Jewish leaders, James was brought to the pinnacle of the Temple of Jerusalem, a high and sacred place. Imagine the scene. James, standing atop the temple, looking out over the city he loved, preaching one final message of repentance and faith. But instead of heeding his words, the enraged leaders pushed him from the pinnacle. James fell, but did not die immediately. Gravely injured, he knelt in prayer, asking forgiveness for those who had attacked him. In this moment of vulnerability and pain, his faith remained unshaken. As he prayed, his attackers beat him to death with clubs and stones, ending his life in an act of extreme violence. The image of James the Lesser praying fervently as his life ebbed away embodies absolute devotion and spiritual strength. His martyrdom is an alliteration of justice and sacrifice, a testament to his undying faith until his very last breath. Thaddeus, also known as Jude Thaddeus, or simply Jude, son of James, is a figure shrouded in mystery and deep devotion. He is not the Judas who betrayed Jesus, but another of the 12 apostles, whose contributions and sacrifices often remain in the shadows of history. Thaddeus is remembered for his tireless dedication and the faith that led him to preach in distant lands where the message of Christ was still unknown. With a heart burning with faith, Thaddeus traveled to Syria, spreading the gospel with courage and fervor. His preaching brought him to the city of Edessa, where he converted King Abgar and many of his subjects. Imagine the city of Edessa with its ancient streets and majestic temples being transformed by the apostles' message. Thaddeus's impact was so profound that the Christian faith began to flourish in that region, challenging established beliefs and attracting the wrath of the pagan leaders. But this transformation came at a price. Thaddeus faced intense persecution and was eventually captured by those who saw the new faith as a mortal threat. He was brutally martyred, enduring a series of tortures that tested his physical and spiritual endurance. Reports say that he was beaten with clubs and then killed with a blow to the head from an axe. Each strike resonated like an onomatopoeic sound of faith and courage, an alliteration of pain and glory. The image of Thaddeus enduring unimaginable tortures without renouncing his faith is a powerful testament to devotion and sacrifice. His violent death, a symbol of resistance, marked the city of Edessa and left a lasting legacy that echoes to this day. Simon, known as the Zealot due to his fervor and passion, was a man of intense convictions and unwavering devotion. Before following Jesus, he was part of the Zealots, a Jewish faction known for its resistance to Roman rule and its desire to see Israel freed from foreign oppression. When he encountered Jesus, Simon transformed his passion for freedom into a burning devotion to the Christian faith. After Jesus' ascension, Simon continued to spread the gospel with a zeal that reflected his zealot past. He traveled through various regions, including Egypt and Persia, preaching tirelessly and converting many to Christianity. Imagine Simon, with his powerful voice and fervent gaze, challenging authorities and converting hearts in hostile lands where accepting Christianity often meant facing persecution and death. It was in Persia that Simon met his final fate. He preached openly against the worship of the sun god, a common practice in the region. His exclusive devotion to Jesus and his emphatic rejection of pagan gods angered the local priests. Captured and tortured, Simon was ultimately condemned to death for refusing to renounce his faith. The image of Simon, bound and facing his executioners, is a metaphor of courage and resistance. Reports say that he was sawn in half, a brutal execution that exemplifies the severity of the persecution he faced. Each cry of pain was an onomatopoeia of his indomitable faith, a hyperbole of extreme sacrifice that echoes to this day as a testament to his unyielding devotion. Judas Iscariot, a name that has become synonymous with betrayal, is one of the most enigmatic and dark figures in Christian history. Chosen by Jesus as one of the 12 apostles, Judas walked alongside the Master, witnessed miracles, heard divine teachings, and shared intimate moments with him and the other disciples. However, his story took a dramatic and tragic turn, marked by the betrayal that forever altered the course of events. Judas's betrayal is shrouded in symbolism and irony. As the group's treasurer, responsible for managing the finances, he is often portrayed as someone who succumbed to the temptation of money. For 30 pieces of silver, he handed Jesus over to the religious leaders, an act that has become an enduring metaphor for disloyalty and greed. Imagine the Garden of Gethsemane, silent and dark, where Judas, with a kiss, sealed his master's fate. The sound of soldiers approaching, the expression of pain and understanding in Jesus' eyes, all unfold in a scene of devastating betrayal. But Judas's story does not end with the betrayal. Haunted by remorse and guilt, Judas tried to return the 30 pieces of silver to the religious leaders, but his gesture was rejected. Desperate and unable to bear the weight of his actions, he chose to take his own life. Judas hanged himself from a tree, and his body fell, bursting open. His violent death is a personification of guilt and despair, a hyperbole of regret that illustrates the profound impact of his betrayal. The figure of Judas Iscariot reminds us of human fragility, temptation, and the devastating power of guilt. His story, though dark, is an integral part of the narrative of the apostles and the Passion of Christ, showing that even among those closest to Jesus, darkness can find its way. And so we have journeyed through the lives of the 12 apostles, men from diverse backgrounds and temperaments, called by Jesus for a mission that would transcend time and space. Their stories, interwoven with miracles, teachings, and sacrifices, form the foundation of the Christian faith that continues to shape the lives of millions to this day. These apostles, fishermen, tax collectors, zealots, abandoned their ordinary lives to follow a path of fervent faith and unwavering commitment. Peter, the rock, crucified upside down, taught us about humility and the strength of faith. Andrew, on the diagonal cross, showed us persistence amidst suffering. James the Greater, the first apostolic martyr, represented courage in the face of persecution. John, the beloved disciple, brought us apocalyptic revelations while enduring exile. Philip, crucified in Hierapolis, symbolized resilience and unceasing preaching. Bartholomew, skinned alive, became a symbol of extreme devotion. Thomas, whose doubt turned into conviction, left us with a powerful lesson of faith. Matthew, the redeemed tax collector, exemplified transformation and redemption. James the Lesser, the just, demonstrated the power of prayer and righteousness. Thaddeus, martyred in Edessa, reflected unshakable faith amidst persecution. Simon the Zealot, who challenged paganism with fervent devotion. And finally, Judas Iscariot, whose betrayal and remorse illustrate human fragility and the devastating power of guilt. Have you ever felt the weight of difficult decisions or the uncertainty that challenges your faith? In moments of darkness and doubt, the teachings of Jesus Christ offer an unparalleled light. Imagine facing daily challenges with divine guidance that not only strengthens but profoundly transforms your life. We present to you the practical guide to overcoming daily challenges with the teachings of Jesus. This guide is not just a book. It's a source of spiritual power that can change your life. Discover how to apply the eternal teachings of Jesus in real-life situations, finding solutions that go beyond the superficial. Now is the time to strengthen your faith and discover the peace that only the presence of Jesus can bring. Don't miss this unique opportunity for transformation. Click the link below and let the wisdom of Jesus guide every aspect of your life, bringing clarity, hope, and renewed confidence in the future. These simple men, whose lives were marked by tragedies and spiritual triumphs, left us an invaluable legacy of faith and sacrifice. Their stories, rich with symbolism, metaphors, and powerful imagery, continue to inspire and touch the hearts of believers around the world. They remind us that even in the most difficult circumstances, faith can be a transformative and unbreakable force. As we reflect on the tragic fates of these apostles, we are called to renew our own commitment to faith and remember that, like them, we can find strength and inspiration in our spiritual journey.